see up there, that's what we call a stoping. So generally this mine's worked on flats, but what they do is when they find a vertical, or what we call a vein, that runs up and down, they'll actually follow it up, and what they do is they build scaffolding. So they'll be working on the level of the floor here, coming at this height, and then they will have worked up, and they'll have worked up that, and as they go in, they're shoving these tree trunks or spars across like that, and then they build scaffolding over them and work up, so that they actually end up with a platform. And they'll keep working up like that until they exhaust the lead supply, and they'll keep going up. If you look above your head there, there's some nice bits of galena. So the galena is lead sulphate, so that's a combination of lead, sulphur and silver, and there might be a few other trace bits and pieces in there, but it's mainly that. When it forms in like dice shaped or in cubes that look like dice, and the slower the formation, the bigger the crystals. So each one of the cubes is a crystal of lead. If you look on either side of us here, we can see that we're actually walking through boulders that have been cut. So all the rock around us is waste material. So they've mined this area out down to floor level, and then as they've worked further and further into the mine, rather than take out the waste, they stack it up in these piles, and these piles are called deads. So these are the non-mineral bearing rocks. If you look at the size of some of these that have been shifted by hand, it makes you realise how much hard work it was involved. So all this pile of rocks has been moved by hand, and it goes back as far as we can see over this way. It goes back quite a long way that way. Let's move on. So this is where it gets more interesting. We start to get a few splits in the track, and we can see that this area is still nicely piled up with deads, isn't it? We see the soot marks on the wall's edge. These are from the mines when they were working. They use a piece of clay and stick a candle to the rock face or the ceiling, or wherever near where they were working, so they had light where they were working. And that's why we have the soot marks everywhere. A couple of examples of railway track. These are quite old examples. They're really quite some of the earliest railway tracks made of iron. These are. If you look how short each length is, so it'll be from there to there, very short length, bowed underneath, so it's got a belly underneath it like that, fastened in on either end, very heavy. As they were discovering the technology of iron and for using it for rails, they could only cast short lengths. Anything that they made too long would snap because of the impurities. As they became better at smelting and working in iron and casting it, the sections got longer and longer and longer until eventually steel took over, and you'll find that some of these are much longer. Another piece of iron banding there. That looks like it's been attached to something, so it could have been part of a bucket or something like that, or a sledgy type piece, or a reinforcement around a tub or something. Just a piece of iron. Shall we move on? Let's go. So you can, as you come up to where you can see where they've worked the material out from ground level here. and they've worked back and back and back, and they've followed the lead, and they've gone up and round and up behind us here. We've got a big slab of rock here, and they've supported it along the side here. So they've taken the dead waste, formed a pack wall, and they've taken it right up to the ceiling to support it. And what the miners did, rather than bring in pit props and things like that, they used the materials, the waste materials, to form these supports. And in you know, in places we can see they've got it stuffed with turf, and again that turf is similar to what they were doing with the lime plaster. They stuffed the turf in, and it would help increase the airflow through the mine. So, and then they also used it in the backs of hoppers to stop losing the lead down in the gaps of the hoppers that were made of stone as well. So we've got our first nice example of really nice example of stone arching. So when they were placing the deads in, they need to protect their walkways and railways, and they used to build in these stone arches. So this is sandstone, so this is stone that's been imported into the mine. They've brought that from local area, it's been quarried, and they've brought it in, and they've made this arching. And if you can see, in between each of the stones there's a little wedge to create that arch, and each one of these is wedged to form the arch. Once they've formed the arch, they then load it with stones above, and that makes it really solid. And if you think these arches are coming on for 150, 170 years old, they've stood the test of time, haven't they? Now we can move on if you like, if we finish filming. So this is a hopper. Okay, so this was where they would bring the material down from above. This has got the wood out of it. It's got the wood taken off the front here. This would have had a wooden slope in. We'll see them further on. But you can see at the back how they've stuffed all the cracks up to stop them losing the mineral into the gaps between the stones. You don't spend all day knocking it out and then throw it away again, do you? We've got an old door here. They use these in lots of the mines to create airflows. So if they didn't want air to go down that way and they wanted it in this area, they'd put a door in and direct it. And they're also really quite good if they were blasting in that part of the mine and they didn't want the dust to come up this part, they'd just shut the doors off and it would stop a lot of the dust coming up this way. Because dust was the killer of the miner. You know, more miners dying from breathing the dust in and getting silicosis than they did from anything else, any other injury. It was quite nasty, and it was affected our modern coal miners until last century, didn't it? Same sort of thing. You don't actually find many of these intact. A lot of them have been taken out. Straight away into another artefact, an intact hopper. You can see where it's had the little shutters that have been across the control flow down there. There's another one down here, so if you quite good engineering and that short one. We're just working above us, and it gives like a little storage area for them to shovel it in and hold it while it's going through. You know, if you imagine this lined again with the timber, like, it just makes it so much easier. Interesting little piece there. Have that bit. I won't charge you extra for that.
Cheers.
Until you come into an area like this and you actually see the enormity of the piles of these rocks that have all been moved by hand. You know, this has been a chamber, and it would have been an empty chamber for a while, but as they were moving forward, they've just backfilled, a bit like a mole really, going through the soil, where they dig in front and then they push it behind them. So what they've done in here is they've taken out the mineral bearing rock and left the rubbish behind, but stacked it up really quite neatly. If you see the bits where it's fallen down there, that's not fallen down, that's been pulled down by people that's gone through here. You know, they stacked it up to stay out of the way, not fall back in. You think every single piece of that rock has been moved by a human hand. You get to realise, you know, how much work's been done. If I said to you, I want you to empty this chamber, I imagine how long it'd take you. I think I could set you on doing it, and I think 10 years down the line you'd still be shifting it. There's just that much of it.
You think, you know, what would the, you know, there's no money made in that.
No. The thing is, you've got to shift it so you can work, haven't you?
Yeah.
Now once you've blasted it out, you've got to sort it, haven't you? So I just stopped here just to show you this little bit of a pack wall here. And we think that, you know, everywhere is solid rock behind these pack walls, but the pack walls were built and they were a great place for shoving all the rubbish. So if you go climbing up the pack walls and you pull one down on you, you can end up with a slip of this stuff on top of you. You know, people don't always appreciate the dangers of actually climbing up and rummaging through the stuff that's down here. And I'm sure there'll be some well-educated people that come down here that do the mineral tapping, but some will be just idiots, and one day one of them will come in here and not leave. But
could be already throwing off.
Yeah. But some of this is shale, so this rock is really soft. Push it in there. Really good chap. Yeah. Turn rock into dust.
Gives you miner's lung.
What?
Gives you miner's lung.
Yeah. What do you call it? We just call it the black spit. If you think back into the 1800s, you know, late 1700s, early 1800s, most people would smoke pipes. And if you think they're smoking pipes with no filters on, the amount of tar that's going into the lung, and then you're shoving a load of dust, you're basically creating a road inside your lungs, aren't you? Stone chippings on top of tar. And imagine working down here, shoveling and blasting and that. The amount of dust down here would have been horrendous.
Is that somebody's rubbish just next to that stone?
It probably is.
Just looks like a tin or a wrapper or something.
Yeah, looks like an old battery to me. But you know, they reckon most miners lived. The average age of a miner was about 44 in the 1700s. But you know, people say, well, 44, that's no age. But if you think at the same time, the Jane Eyre and most of her family were dead by the time they were in the 30s, if not before, you know, so most of the siblings are a good bit younger.